Shabbat Shalom. Tonight we gather not only to welcome Shabbat, but because it's this week, we're going to have to confront one of the most painful and enduring tensions in Jewish life. The sacred pursuit of peace, of shalom on the one hand, and the sacred obligation to defend life, even sometimes through force. Last night, as of course you're aware, Israel carried out a targeted and unprecedented airstrike against Iranian military infrastructure and senior leadership. It was a deliberate and difficult action taken in response to a clear and growing threat. It was not an act of revenge. It was not an act of aggression. It was an act of self-defense, and one that aligns with the deep moral tradition of our people. Now, a helpful way to think about this moment, if we want to do so through the lens of Jewish values and Jewish tradition, is by focusing on a single Hebrew root, Resh Daled Pei, and I'll explain what that word means. So first, there's a concept in Judaism of a rodef, which is someone who is pursuing. And it's a whole category that you find in the Talmud. Someone who is actively threatening another with grave harm. And in Tractate Sanhedrin, we learn Tanu Rabbanan, Minayin lerodef achar chavero lahargo, shenitan lahatzilo benafsho. The rabbis taught, how do we know that if someone is pursuing another person in order to kill that person, the one who is being pursued should be saved? It's an obligation to save that person's life, even at the cost of the pursuer's life. What is the proof text for this? And why is this even a question that the rabbis want to ask? Because it says in the Ten Commandments, lo tirtzach, which means you shall not murder. But then the question is, does that mean, are you ever able to kill? Even if it's in self-defense, even if it's not self-defense, but you see someone coming to harm a third party, do you have an obligation to kill the pursuer to save that third party? And so the rabbis say, no, there is a proof text, and it comes from the Torah, lo ta'amod al dam re'acha. Okay? So it says in Leviticus, we just read it a few weeks ago, you shall not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. What's the implication? If you see someone coming to spill your neighbor's blood, don't just stand there. Do something. Save that person's life. Now, this is not a license for vengeance. It is rather a framework for moral defense. It's a framework for moral defense. It teaches us that preserving life, your own life or another's, is actually a mitzvah. It's a commandment, even when it requires taking forceful action. And then the Talmud makes a general principle of that. In that same tractate, Sanhedrin, we read, Haba laha'archa, hashkem lahargo. General principle, if someone is coming to kill you, you kill him first. You get up quickly and kill him first. And that's why, from the perspective of Jewish tradition and Jewish law, a preemptive attack on someone that you know is going to attack you is not considered an act of aggression. It's actually an act of self-defense. It's actually an embodiment of the value of not standing idly by when someone's coming to spill your neighbor's blood. So when a deadly threat is imminent, we're not only permitted to respond, but according to Jewish tradition, it's obligatory. It's a mitzvah to respond. We have to act before lives are lost, not out of hatred, not out of anger or a desire for retaliation, but to fulfill the mitzvah to protect the innocent. Iran, with its 4-decade campaign of terror, its open declarations and repeated declarations to destroy the state of America, little Satan, and also to destroy the United States, big Satan, its funding of Hamas and other terrorist organizations, and of course its recent direct missile assault on Israel, puts it into the category of a rodef, of a pursuer. Last night, Israel responded as our tradition, I believe, would demand. In ways the rabbis could not have imagined in terms of the technology of it all, but the intention was certainly one they could understand. At the same time, however, that Hebrew root rodef, which in the text I just shared with you talks about someone who's pursuing you or an innocent third party to harm them. At the same time, that root appears elsewhere in our tradition in a different context. At the heart of who we are is another kind of pursuer. We are supposed to be a rodef shalom, as it teaches in the Psalms, bakesh shalom v'rodfehu, seek peace and pursue it. The exact same Hebrew root. Peace isn't just a hope that we're supposed to whisper in prayer, that we're supposed to utter when we gather together in our synagogues and we say nice things about what we want the future to look like. Peace is supposed to be something we pursue with energy, with vigor. It's a path that we're supposed to chase after. It's a goal we're supposed to work towards constantly. And perhaps that's why the prayer for peace is in every single Amidah. Morning, afternoon, evening, on the festivals, all the holidays. We always include a prayer for peace. It reminds us this is all the time. You don't just say a prayer once a year and then you've accomplished it. It's something that we're supposed to pursue always. And we're supposed to do everything imaginable to create a world where war is not necessary. We're supposed to negotiate, and our Jewish tradition includes lots and lots of texts that show us that the first thing you do is you reach out and you try to have a conversation, and the rabbis go into great detail about how to go about that. We form alliances. We engage in diplomacy and dialogue. We sit down to negotiate again and again. We try over and over to realize this dream, this vision of peace. The painful truth, of course, is that to be a pursuer of peace, a rodef shalom, does not mean that you are always and under all circumstances going to avoid war. It does not equal pacifism. Sometimes the pursuit of peace requires decisive, even violent action. And though I'm not a political analyst or an expert in international relations, I sure have studied at the feet of many of them. And what I've heard them say again and again and again is that deterrence means something in the Middle East quite different than how we think about it in other contexts at times. And we have to understand how to speak Middle Eastern sometimes. And that can be part of the sacred work of peace, actually, even though, of course, sometimes it is accompanied by bloodshed. So we have to acknowledge the cost. As precise and restrained as the Israel Air Force strives to be, operations like last night's are inevitably going to result in what military language antiseptically calls collateral damage. But make no mistake, collateral damage is not some clinical term. It means real human beings suffering, some of them innocents, some of them children, some of them enemies of the regime who want nothing to do with the mullahs and the ayatollahs, but sometimes they are going to suffer as well. And this weighs heavily on us. It is painful to know that and to acknowledge that. Still, though, we must not confuse moral complexity with moral confusion. When a rodef threatens innocent life, Jewish law and Jewish ethics do not merely permit a response, they demand it. We must hold both of these truths, that we are rodfei shalom, we are committed to peace, and also that in the face of a rodef, we will act decisively. That is one of the core challenges we face as Jews, not just in this moment, not just in 2025 in the face of Iranian aggression and enemies like Hamas, but if we look back into Jewish history, we know this is something that we faced again and again and again. One critically important difference is that we are now able to face such a challenge with a military whose power is something, again, the rabbis could not have imagined. They could not imagine what the IAF did last night. Most of us could not imagine what the IAF did last night, including, I still cannot get my mind around this, apparently an entire field of drones that somehow Israel planted in Iran prior to this action, and none of the Iranian leadership or regime was aware of that. That's one for the ages. Let me conclude by talking a little bit about our collective responsibility. these burdens, this challenge of trying to manage the tension between being a rodef shalom and standing up to the rodef who's coming to harm us, this is not something that we have to face all by ourselves. It's a collective challenge. We are part of a people. We're part of a covenant. And we are bound together by a sense of responsibility, arevut in Hebrew. And there's a beautiful line in the Talmud, Kol Yisrael arevim ze bazeh. All Israel is connected to one another, but it can also mean that root is that we are sureties for one another. And I know so many of us felt this last night. Raise your hand if you woke up repeatedly last night to check the news. Raise your hand, keep it up if you repeatedly reached out to friends and family in Israel. Are you okay? I heard you were in the shelter. What's going on? Send me a photo. That's what it is to have that sense of arevut, to know that if my friend, if my cousin, if my loved one, if my child, because there are people in the congregation here this evening who have children over there or family over there, if they are in that shelter, how can I sleep? How can I have a peaceful night's sleep knowing that? That's arevut. All Israel is responsible for one another. We're responsible for helping one another pursue peace, and we're responsible for helping one another stay safe. And that's true here in Los Angeles, too. It's not just there. And what's beautiful is in the last week, go back to the raising of the hands shtick, how many of you had an Israeli family member or friend prior to the attack on Iran last night who reached out to you and said, are you safe in LA? Are you okay? Are you all right? What's going on? I'm worried about you. And I'm telling them, like, do you know that LA County is about the size of Israel? And where these things are happening are pretty far away from us. But that's arevut going the other way. So wherever we are, we stick up for each other. We reach out to each other. This is how we can be strong. And it is also how we can be compassionate. It's also how when we feel threatened, when we feel anxious and angry and we scream, we can reach out to one another and say, it's going to be okay. We're going to be all right. We're going to be okay. Let's do this together. May we be clear-eyed and courageous, and above all, may we be worthy of the peace we so fervently pursue, ze bazeh, together. Shabbat shalom.